It's simple, really. Great stories with a good cup of tea. It's the Tea with Mike show. All right, cool. All right. Hi, guys, and welcome to another Tea with Mike story. Joining me for this particular story is Emily Davis. Welcome to another Tea with Mike story featuring you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. This is super fun.
Cool. And so today's tea fact is a little bit different. So since starting the show, I've held 43 different conversations with 43 different people. So therefore, I will have drunk 43 cups of tea. So and that tea fact, I guess, if I'm quoting myself, comes from teawithmike.com. So again, welcome to the show, Emily. How's your day been so
My day,
far?
my day's been pretty good. I've been connecting with a bunch of people and doing some networking things, so it's been a great day.
Awesome. So do you want to start by telling the Tea with Mike audience a little bit about you?
Sure. So, I am a best-selling author. I am a working psychic, and I'm a metaphysical coach. So I help people essentially overcome their own fears of using their psychic abilities and learn how to do them actively. And when I say psychic, I don't just mean like, oh, I can see the future, because usually when I say that word, a lot of people are like get conjured up of like pictures of like neon signs of palm readers and stuff. And that's not exactly what I do. I do everything from channeling past lives to mediumship, where I talk to people's past loved ones, to working with people's energy fields, to house clearings, and everything in between. So a ton of different really awesome metaphysical magical stuff.
Cool. And so do you want to dive a little bit deeper into exactly what you do and what you really do within those, if we're calling them like jobs, I guess? Forgive me, I'm not very experienced in this spiritual journey that we're about to go down, but
Oh,
do you want
no
to
worries.
educate everyone and just tell us a little bit more about what it entails and why it's beneficial to some people?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two prongs to my work. One, I am like I said, a working psychic, which means I do all those different channelings and stuff, and that's really helpful for people in a lot of different ways. So essentially, what I'm doing is I'm tuning into various different energies, whether I'm channeling energies that we can't see, or I'm tapping into like your energetic field, which affects the way you physically feel, or you emotionally feel, or you energetically feel, and doing work in those capacities. So depending upon the reading that I'm doing for someone, I will either be seeing things in my own head or even in front of my eyes, or I will be talking to their spirit guides very actively. I can either hear them physically with my physical ears or in my mind. And then when I'm working with people in kind of a coaching capacity, we are tapping into what exactly are their magical gifts, what are exactly are their psychic abilities, how can we unblock those so that they can come out into the open, and also how can we overcome all the fears that they may be having around using those gifts, because the number one thing that blocks our magic is our fear and our shame of being magical. We all have our own set of intuitive gifts. This is not a unique thing. Every single person on the planet has them. They're just blocked in varying degrees. So when I coach people, we're working through all of those blocks and all of those fears so that they can feel confident in being the magical person that they are.
Cool. And then, so what sort of, I guess, techniques and guidelines do you use to help achieve what you do?
So I have a whole bunch of different techniques. I basically, a little bit of my backstory is I've known about my own, psychic abilities and magical abilities for as long as I can remember, essentially from the time I was a very little kid. I can remember, seeing people and hearing guides and feeling emotions and things that didn't necessarily belong to me, and not fully understanding what they were. So I started trying to block them out throughout my adolescence. And then right after high school, I ended up getting into a really abusive relationship, and all of my magic shut off completely. Like, it was completely gone. There was no space for it. I was just in fight or flight all the time, so I was continually stuck in this fear mode. And then once I finally escaped that, after about 4 years, which was a long time, once I finally escaped that space, I really wanted to. I was like, all right, you know what? I'm no longer afraid of my magic. There's nothing left for me to be afraid of. I've lived in fear for so many years. I want my magic to come back, and it didn't. And I was like, why is this not working? Like, I don't understand it. It used to work. It's worked for my entire life and now it's gone. Like, that's not fair. Now I finally want it and it doesn't want to come. So I had to go through about, 2-3 years of doing a lot of different self-discovery processes and clearings and energy work and all this different stuff to finally open my gifts back up and learn how to use them without all the fear I had felt around using them that was keeping me stuck. So a lot of the tools and techniques I do with my clients now is really heavy on stuff that I learned during that period of time where I was really rediscovering all those pieces of me. And I also use a lot of my own gifts to see where they're blocked, help them switch limiting beliefs, and really dive into like the root causes of these fears so that they stop affecting all aspects of their life, not just their magic.
Nice. And so when you were on your path to self-discovery,
yeah,
kind of like how did you go from like, I guess it's been muted, the magic as you're calling it. How did you reopen those like energy flows and channels? Like, what specific things?
So there was a couple of different things I did. I did kind of the classic route because I was also dealing obviously with a lot of trauma from the abuse, and trauma is another thing that really keeps our magic stuck. So I was doing the classic route of like going to therapy, and I had a coach that was trying to help me like overcome the trauma and that sort of thing, and reading books. And then on the magic side, I was like, well, what is the easiest way? Like, what's my best starting point? So the first thing I started with was I was like, I'm going to get a deck of tarot cards again. I haven't had one since I was a teenager, and I'm going to try that first. So I like got my first set of cards and started trying to tune in and do readings that way and try to clear that stuff out. I was trying to I actively journaled and really worked through any sort of like magical fear that would come up. Every time a fear would come up, I would write down what it was so that I knew it wasn't as scary anymore because I was writing it down on paper. I kept a magical journal, which is something I have all of my clients do now, but where they basically record anything and everything magical that happens to them throughout their day, whether it's they had a crazy dream last night that they feel was more important than just on the surface level, or if they saw the number 1111 7 times, or if they could hear their spirit guide really clearly, or whatever it is. I have people keep a very, very clear magical journal because it helps you recognize your patterns and really start tapping into that magic. So those are like some of my like very base level starting things. And then once I could start to hear one guide, I focused on building a relationship with that one guide and going from there. So it was like a little trickle, and it just kind of built on itself over and over and over from then.
So for, like, again, for those that don't really know much about like what you do, if you were talking to someone, say me, because I don't really know much about this, I just found your story intriguing. So if I was asking you like if I asked you for your job title, what would you in like a sentence or a few words, what would you label what you do as?
I'm a psychic and metaphysical coach.
And now, is this something that you have to have formal education in, or is this something that stems from a lot of other things?
Yes and no. So there's not really necessarily formal education. There's like a huge trend of like life coaching and stuff online nowadays, and some are actual legitimate coaches, and some really aren't, and just decided they were going to do this one day. And so for me, it was really important that I did get certified in some things so that I could like really help people in that way. So I am a certified theta healer, and I'm certified in different energy work and things along those lines. So I do have those like certified backgrounds. But a lot of what I help my clients do, I'm using strictly my own intuitive gifts to help them tap into theirs. So I'm using my own psychic abilities, the things my spirit guides are telling me, the things their spirit guides are telling me, to help them really work through their stuff. So it's not like that I was like, I have a degree in metaphysical coaching, but it is something that I have done for many years now, and I'm really aligned to doing. And it is in a process that has been proven and tested and that sort of thing.
Okay, and so when you're working with a client, what sort of like environments do you like to work with them in, and how is this important when you're trying to help them achieve the goals, I guess, that they're working to?
Absolutely. So most of the clients I work with actually are online because I live in a very small town in the rural mountains of California. So there's not a lot of people here. I have like 1 or 2 clients that are local, and that's pretty much it. So most of the time I do a lot of like video conferencing. at a lot of online work, because the way energy works and the way spirit works and all that sort of stuff, the cool thing about it is, unlike our own physical limitations that we see in our physical concrete world that you can like touch and squeeze and stuff about the things around you, the energy world doesn't work like that. So you and I sitting having a conversation, even if it's over just the computer screen, I can actually feel your energy or feel my client's energy and channel for them, etc., even though I'm not physically in the room for them. So the first thing we always focus on is making sure that they are feeling safe just with their gifts and what's coming up immediately, and they're feeling grounded and they have the ability to shield and all these other things so that they're feeling safe in their own environment. But I work with them primarily digitally.
Okay, cool. So in what you do, would you say that, like, is there a certain component that's almost like if you were acting or you were dancing when you in the performing arts, when you really trying to get into a specific environment and stay grounded? Are there any parallels?
A little bit, actually. It's great that you say that, because one of my deepest ways that I connect with my own magic is the visual arts. So like watching people perform, or really connecting with film, or even reading and things along those lines. That's how I really connect and resonate with my own magic, and writing, obviously, as I'm an author. So there is a space there. Really, the environment that I'm trying to create with my clients is one where they understand that they have their own magical control over everything around them, that they can manifest their future, they can speak to their guides, they have real direction. And we get to like that higher level vibrational energy where we are consciously talking about these deeper magical concepts. And a lot of times people don't actually feel comfortable talking to people about their magical gifts and stuff, because there's not a huge community where they're at or something along those lines. So it's a huge emphasis for me that every space that I bring my clients to, where I'm talking with them and we're talking about their deep magic stuff, is very, very safe, and they feel that sacred energy that is put there.
Now I'm curious, and this just came to my mind. When you're working with clients, do you like to try and I guess force the environment? So, for example, you have a painting or something visual behind you as you're speaking to me today?
Yes. Yeah, everything it's interesting. So color has different vibrations and different energies as well. So what I created my energetic space that I sit in, so my office essentially, I wanted it to feel very magical and very uplifting. So I have like plants that are huge. My like little office tree is massive now, and I'm like, okay. So I like plants, and I have like a beautiful background that like pulls into this energy of this like kind of ancient magic feeling of like being outside and connecting with nature, because that's like one of the first ways people usually connect with their magic, is like something to do with nature. So I pull a lot of that energy in, and I also do a lot of energy clearing in this space. So I don't let any residual energy sit, meaning like if there ever was a spirit that would come in, like I would clear that out immediately, or any energy I pick up throughout the day from other people, I constantly am clearing that out so that the space always feels really good and feels really comfortable, and feels really inspiring to the magic that's within us.
And you just mentioned clearing spirits out of the room. Can you give me an example of what that looks like, or what you do to, quote, get rid of spirits out of the room?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do essentially like haunted building clearings, where I'll go in, and I don't even have to physically be at the building. I can do it long distance. Which is really interesting, because people are always like, no, you can't. And it's like, no, it really is. It's true. You can really bend energy and time in that way. And I can channel my consciousness essentially into someplace else. But what I will do is, if you're having a haunting problem, which people tend to have, especially out here where I live, there's a lot of like old mining communities and stuff. So there's some haunting problems for sure. And I will go in, and I will channel energetically and see which ghosts or spirits are existing in the space, and then literally will clear them out and send them back on their way to the light, to creator energy, to that energy of all that is, so that they are removed. Because it really is a lot sad a lot of the times, because what ghosts are is part of someone's consciousness that got left behind when they passed. And so it's not even a whole consciousness. So it's really sad for them, because they're just kind of stuck in this in between. Some of them like honestly believe they've already passed over, and they don't understand why I'm bothering them. Some of them don't want to leave because they're emotionally connected to the space. Some of them, they all have their own reasons why they're there, and sending them on their way is always the best option to go about doing that. So that's like what I do in it. But it takes a little bit of effort and a little bit of time to do that, because they have to have like a conversation with the ghosts, essentially.
Awesome. And so then how would you counter the perspective of someone that maybe thinks even what they've just heard from you today and the questions that I've been asking, and they take the stance or the perspective that what you do is a bit of a myth. They accept that there's psychology, and it's proven that different things in the environment, like we talked about, color can have an effect on how somebody is feeling. So kind of psychological. So
Yeah.
how would you answer that perspective? I'm curious.
First of all, if someone has that perspective, most of the time I say, like, you're lucky you've never had a haunting happen in your house, because it is not something that's psychological. Things will fall off your walls. Like, there's very concrete energy that happens. There was a period of time where I was helping a client, and she literally had like her ghost like speaking through her like Amazon Fire Stick. Like, she could like hear leave the voices, and was like texting me the voices and like all these things that were happening, which was like really crazy for her. So there is, I know, the perspective that some of this isn't real and that stuff. And if that's what serves people, then power to you. Like, do what feels aligned, believe what you feel is aligned for you, that serves you in your highest good. I'm not going to try to convert anybody, because if you're not in that magical space, that's fine. You don't have to be. As long as you're living you're the best you to the best of your ability, and that feels aligned, that's great. However, if there's a part of you that is not believing in these things because you're afraid, I would say definitely address that part, because a lot of people will be like, oh no, this stuff is impossible, whatever. And really they're saying that because they're suppressing a lot of their own gifts. They're suppressing a lot of this own thing that they do kind of think really is there, but they don't want to acknowledge it. So they're living in that fear space, as opposed to like living in their like concrete real best space, because they're ignoring parts of themselves. So if there are, if you are thinking like, oh, there's no way what she's saying is true, but there is a part of you that thinks maybe possibly there is, that's what you need to address, because people's gifts show up in different ways and their magic shows up in different ways, and fear blocks a lot of that. And so that would be the only thing I say is like, I'm not going to try to convince anybody, but be conscious of the reasons why you're actually believing what you believe.
Oh yeah, and so far throughout our conversation, you've used the word gift on numerous occasions. So I'm curious to know what your definition of the word gift is.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I'm talking about it in my context, I'm talking about psychic gifts, medium gifts, spiritual gifts, which are essentially abilities to perceive information that your typical five senses cannot. So it's literally your magic to change the world. It's I call them gifts because so often people think they're curses, or they feel like they're horrible and they don't understand why they have them, and they just make things harder. And I specifically talk about them as gifts because having the ability to perceive differently is a real sincere benefit to your lifestyle, to the people around you, and to your consciousness, to your awareness, all of those things. So it's a deep gift to have this ability to perceive in different ways. And there's about 10 billion different types of gifts you have. It's funny because people are like, oh, you're a psychic, you see the future. And I'm like, well, I mean, I can, I guess, if I wanted to, but that's not what I do, actually. We just have this human need to label things. And so that is what I have labeled myself as. But really, I have all of these different abilities that I just kind of fall under that umbrella. And some people are like, I have this thing that happens to me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know what that is called, but I'm not denying that that is a thing that happens. Like, let's work with that. And, that goes from there too. So there's a whole wide range of different abilities and gifts you can have within this perception blanket.
Cool. Can you
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit. Can you say that again?
Say two examples. Can you give two examples of gifts that people might possess?
Totally. So some people are really, really gifted with, channeling and seeing people's spirit guides, talking to people's spirit guides. Essentially, like, they'll meet a person and they'll see all the people and animals and entities that guide that person through their life. So some people are really gifted and really connected with that. And that I call channeling. Some people call it psychic. Some people call it, anything else that they call it. Who knows? But I call it personally channeling, just because you're channeling and being able to see those spirit guides. And then some people are medical intuitives. They can literally touch a person or see a person or scan a person and see where the energy is not moving through them correctly, see where the pain is, and do energy healing based off of that. And energy healing is super duper powerful and a really, really interesting thing to dive into, because there's so much under there as well. And those are just kind of like base level things that some people have. There's all the gifts that I talk about fall under the blankets of the clairs, is what it's called. So clairs is like the different extrasensory gift, ways of perceiving that you may have. So that's things like clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. They're different ways of perceiving the information that align with your gifts. So there's kind of two different branches of the same tree.
Cool. So how big is the market that you operate in for what you do?
It's actually really big. Specifically right now, we're going through this really interesting trend on the planet where more people are deeply searching for something more. We're awakening to our gifts. We're awakening to our abilities. We're awakening to this concept of having a higher consciousness or a collective consciousness. And the power of meditation is really coming back to the forefront. We're in this really big upswing of essentially, spiritual awareness and awakening. And so right now it's really a growing field because a lot of people feel this deep pull within them to like really learn what their gifts are. They really wish that they were magical. And the truth is they are. They just don't know how to get to that space. And so there's actually quite a few people that are really, really tuning in and wanting to be in this space right now.
Also, and you can answer pretty generically because obviously you operate in this space. How long do you work with an average client, and how much, and then how is it expensive to help, basically have someone else help you unlock your full potential, which is what I'm kind of calling it.
I love it. That's great. So there's varying things. I can work with a client for one reading, which is just an hour-long one reading. They just want to know what their past lives was, or they just want to know what is coming up in their love life, or they just want to, some one question or, one type of reading. And I have like a menu of different things that I do that way. And that's just like a one session. Some people are like, hey, I just want to have like 2 or 3 readings with you to help me get clarity on this and clear some energy blocks that I have and limiting beliefs. And I'm like, okay, cool. So that's like 2 or 3 1-hour sessions. And then like my coaching clients where I'm like, really, we're diving into your stuff. This is not my stuff. I'm not channeling for you. We're getting in your gunk.
Okay.
Yeah. We're getting in your gunk and clearing out your stuff. I work with people for a base level of about 9 weeks. All the way up to about a year. So depending upon like the help they need and the packages they want to do and all that sort of thing. So it's so there's anywhere between the 9 weeks, but that's like the base level. Let's work through your stuff. And then all the way up to a year of support from me. And it really depends on what you think is expensive, if that makes sense. I mean, it's an investment, but it's an investment in overcoming all of the fears that you have that's keeping you stuck and really owning your own potential. So there's varying degrees of investment, everywhere from just the one reading, which obviously is going to be much less than a 9-week program. But it's everything that I do has a really powerful and deep lasting impact, which is something I'm super, super aligned with and passionate about, is that I don't want you to come in and invest in 9 weeks with me and then leave and be like, cool, she helped me. And then 2 weeks later be like, oh my gosh, because she's not here, I can't do anything. It's like, no, like I'm investing in something that you can step away from and go exist in the world with these skills forever, not just in that 9 weeks.
Obviously, without giving names and too much detail, because that's privacy and all that good stuff. But do you have some more generic examples of some success stories?
Yeah, totally. So it's really interesting because most people who end up starting my program with me, they're like, hey, like I just want to overcome my fears of all this stuff. Like things are talking to me as I'm falling asleep and it's affecting my job, affecting other things. And then by the end of the program, they're like, hey, like this, I now see how my magic is part of my purpose as a human, and I want to do things that are aligned with that purpose. So I've had people during the 9-week program literally quit their 9 to 5 and start their own business, and I'm like, wow, that's like you really got clear messages. I've had people realize that their biggest purpose in life is to help other, to just connect with as many people as possible, because their gift was to help them release emotional burdens from people. So they had this great ability to just sit there and help people speak out these ability, whatever's burdening them. And then they literally could energetically take it away. It was amazing. And they, just spent that time, like they would every day they would text me like, hey, I did this today with this person and this, and that sort of thing, as they would come along. And they weren't doing anything like that before at all. They were kind of avoiding people because they just felt overwhelmed by all the emotions that were getting thrown at them by these people. And they're like, I don't want to be near them. And then eventually by the end of the program, they were able to like really open up and concretely choose to go out and help people, which was really cool. And then I've also had people who like feeling like their house was haunted, kept hearing these voices, and I would do like they had like me do a haunting clearing at first, and I did, and I was like, "There's nothing in your house. This is a you thing. Like guides are talking to you. You need to tap into that." And by the end of the program, they felt confident to like not have those guides talking when they didn't want them to. They could have that space, but also tune in when they needed to, and really just be able to access that magic as it see fit and work with people's guides very actively and stuff. And some people at the end of the program are like, "Yay, I want to charge my services." And some people are like, "Man, I'm just so relieved that I can have the clarity around these gifts and know how to use them in my personal life." And it's everything in between. And there's no pressure because we're discovering your purpose and what's aligned for you. So that's the whole goal, is like no more fear. You get to decide what you do with this magic.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, there's, like you kind of mentioned at the beginning, there's like everything, there's lots of like different degrees that the people, when they come to try and unlock their full potential with you, it can be a tiny thing, it can be a big thing. Every case is, not case, but every person's different, I guess. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say every person's different because you're born with different gifts and you have a different mission. We're all born with different magic because our mission on this planet is different than anyone else's, and only you are able to do that mission. And there's everything from astrology to numerology to just your biology that proves those things. And so what I do is just help clear out all of the fear and everything that's blocking this huge part of you that is aligned with the mission that you're supposed to be doing in this world.
Cool. So what you just described, I'm calling them like roadblocks that are stopping you achieve your like full potential.
Yep. Cool. Traumatic and energetic roadblocks.
And then just for a little bit, like, do you want to tell the Tea with Mike audience a little bit about the book you wrote? What was in the book? You said it was award-winning, correct?
Yeah, so it's a bestseller.
Why it became award-winning? Just a little bit.
It went best-selling on Amazon last fall, and then it actually got picked up by like a New York publisher, and so it's going into bookstores this fall and coming out in audiobooks in just a couple months and stuff like that. So it's really, really exciting. It's kind of different than anything I've talked about so far. So it was more of a passion project. I've written other like fantasy fiction books and stuff that are currently out with agents and things along those lines, and I've always been in the fiction zone and not so much in the nonfiction zone. But with this book, I wanted to talk a lot about overcoming the anxieties that come with PTSD, specifically when dating after a relationship. Because when I was struggling a lot with my own PTSD, or after an abusive relationship, when I was struggling a lot with my own PTSD, I was really, nothing was working really. Not, the therapists weren't really helping all that much. And, I was also connecting with my magic at the time, and that was great, but I was like still struggling with the guilt and the anxiety and the, panic attacks and all this trauma that I had left over. And what I really realized is that the part of the reason that things weren't working is because it wasn't fun for me. It just felt like another chore, another thing I had to do, not another thing I wanted to do. And so I started wondering if I could make healing fun and if I could make healing a game. And I eventually I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with my kids, and I was like, whoa, what if I could leverage this ability to create a character and have them go on a quest and make that actually something that you can use to heal yourself? And that is what I did. And it was amazing and it was game changing. And that's the process I wrote down in the book. So the book is both fiction and nonfiction because it is a self-help book, but with a fantasy narrative storyline, because you're creating a character and you're going on a quest and you're slaying your fear monster and all that sorts of stuff. It's called Damsel No More: The Secret to Slaying Your Anxiety and Loving Again After an Abusive Relationship.
Why, and then just quickly, why do you think the book has been, I guess you could say it's been a little bit successful, a little bit of a hit if it's been picked up, you said, in New York and all these other exciting things?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is there's not a lot of help for people, 5-6 years after an abusive relationship when all of the stuff is coming back up. You spend so much time thinking that you're healing when you're single, and then you're starting to date again and you've had this great relationships, or, find a great person to date, and all of the trauma comes back and you don't understand why. And it's really, really hard for people to go back to a therapist after that because they're like, I just did therapy by myself and now it's not helping. Like, why is this not helping? So I think that's a big part of it. I also think it appeals to a group of people that don't necessarily have a lot of representation as far as in like the self-helpy style community, which is the people like, you know, the millennial gaming, fantasy loving, Comic-Con going people who understand there's this deep power and, you know, in fandom and in fiction. And if we can consciously leverage that, it drastically impacts our mental health. I actually, I'm going to be on a panel at a Comic-Con coming up this next month. I can't say which one yet because they're not announcing what the panels are for the next 5 days. But after 5 days, I can say which one. But I'm going to be on a panel at a Comic-Con at a Comic-Con coming up, talking about this healing power of the fiction and the fantasy and the stories that we love, because it's an emerging trend that these sort of things are really, really helpful to people. And if we can actually consciously use those things that we love, things that light up our soul, that are just fun and nerdy and exciting for us, and to consciously better our lives, there's so much power in that.
Awesome. Do you have any closing thoughts, words of wisdom, advice that you'd like to share as we kind of wrap up the conversation for today?
Just never doubt the fact that you're magic. Even when you're feeling really, really, you know, down, or you're feeling alone, or you have all these dense feelings coming up, like never doubt that you have the power to change the world. You have the power to change your world and your days. And you have your own set of spiritual gifts that is really, really amazing. If any one of your listeners wants some guidance from me, on my website, I offer one free question. So if anyone wants some psychic guidance from me, I would love to answer any questions for you, because it's really is my passion to help people in that way. So my website is damselnomore.com, and they can find all of that on there, which is the same name of my book. It's on the website too.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks for spending some time with me today. I know I definitely learned something new. Like I guess my takeaway from our conversation was it doesn't really necessarily matter what you call it and what perspective you come from, but in everything you do in life, you should always be working towards a goal and unlocking the roadblocks that prevent you from reaching those goals.
Absolutely. I fully agree.
Perfect, guys. This was another story time and Tea with Mike. This was Emily. Thanks again, Emily. And you'll be able to catch this story on teawithmike.com. Have a great rest of your day. It's the Tea with Mike show.